Eric's firm was a consultant who developed Covington's first economic development element for our Covington Comprehensive Plan. I'd like to introduce Mr. Eric Hovee.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here, and actually not quite yet afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here and to talk about Destination Covington and planning for prosperity, which next is followed by committed to economic development and committed to action. There is a history of action within this community, going back to what Hugh Kadama mentioned, in 2003, CEDAS, the Economic Development Council, hosting Preview Covington. We had the privilege of being involved in the period of 2008, working with CEDAS and with the city in developing an economic development strategy that was able to serve both as an element of the city's comprehensive plan for growth management, as well as a broader strategy for economic development initiatives, including some of the things that Richard has just talked about with the town center. And then, of course, we're here today with this event. As part of that strategic planning process, we identified a vision for Covington as being economically distinct, vibrant, really a full-service community, offering good-paying jobs, places to shop and recreate, and a tax base that would be supportive of quality public infrastructure and services. You do this by nurturing families and business entrepreneurs, fostering a pattern of development that will be sustainable for the next generation, and in a community that values its location at the interface, really, between the built and the natural environment. And as I think you've already heard, and you'll be hearing more about, that's the path that this community is really on. In 2008, we conducted a strategic assessment. This was really just as we were beginning to move into, from a period of rapid growth into a period of recession. But I think a lot of what we discovered during that process is continuing on through. Strengths, many of which you've heard about, are the location on the Highway 18 corridor, which was really a growth corridor for southeast King County. We're a young and affluent trade area. 80,000 people or more at its core, which is really 4 immediate zip codes, including Maple Valley, Black Diamond, as well as Covington, and really then reaching out beyond that to larger populations, Richard mentioned, of up to 150,000 for some types of services that people travel into Covington to. Another strength is the expanding retail core that's really now, I think, being augmented by and will really be kind of the ultimate capstone in terms of the downtown plan. The city has a real commitment to manage growth. There is land availability. You'll hear more about that a little bit later. And then this network of natural corridors and trails and really being sort of at the edge of the metro area. Looking into the future, there are opportunities for more retail expansion and the tax generation that provides to provide this full-service community. I'll talk a little bit about the sales leakage that's still on the table as this community kind of diversifies to serve a broader range of local and regional service needs. There's opportunity for more high-wage job growth. There's opportunity in the accommodations and hospitality businesses, everything from hotel, banquet, event, and entertainment venues. Talked about the town center and mixed-use development. And then, as a result of this, as still a relatively new community, for a strengthened community identity, again, as the center of this regional trade area. Let me get into a little bit of some of the demographics. This is an area with growing population. As of this year, in city, within the incorporated city limits, there are about 17,640 residents. There was rapid growth through 2006, somewhat more moderate since through the recession, but overall from 2000 to 2011, Covington grew at an annual average rate of about 2.3% per year. You compare that to King County or Washington State, it's more than double the growth rates either county or statewide. And in effect, Covington is really on track to meet or beat its comprehensive plan target of 19,450 by 2023. A little bit more about some other demographics. As has been referenced, that this is an area with high median income. The chart on the right, the first 3 bars, compare Covington's income, median household income at $84,100 to King County, $75,700, and further above the state of Washington, which is a little over 60,000. Covington is especially strong in sort of the middle income brackets of 75 to 150,000 population. That's really almost 60% of all the households in the Covington area, as compared with less than 40% in King County. And this is a community with a very young population, very vibrant population, high in both the percentage that are under 20, many of whom are in school, and also in the kind of the middle-aged adult demographic of 35 to 54. Very family-oriented, has been mentioned, with an average household size of about a little over 3 persons per household, which is well above both the county and statewide averages. There, you get a sense of the median residential age on the bottom 3 graphs, with median age in Covington being about between 33 and 34 years of age, compared with the county and the state, which are between 37 and 38 years of age. So opportunities in the future are to reduce the work commute by providing more jobs close to home, more opportunities to work without having a long commute, and secondly, there is an opportunity for more multifamily housing. Not surprisingly, as this community in its early development has been a primarily single-family community, but now as there's more local job base, there's the need and the opportunity to kind of broaden that portfolio of housing opportunities as the market begins to come back. Next. Some continued retail opportunities. That core market area that was in the 80,000 bracket is now over 90, or will be over 91,000 by 2015. And again, it reaches out beyond that to that larger 200 or 150,000 capability. We've taken a look at what retail demand and supply is. The top bar shows, the top 2 sets of bars shows 2007. Demand is the first bar, supply is the second, and then we looked at 2010. Basically, this is a market that, even though it has experienced growth in retail activity even through the recession, still is capturing only about 46%, a little less than half of the resident spending potential. So there still is more than half of that spending potential that's still on the table, where people are going elsewhere to shop, and as the community grows, and tourism especially driven by high-income demographics, there's the opportunity to continue to broaden and fill in some of those gaps in the future. As I mentioned, retail sales did increase by about 6% during the recession, and that is despite some contraction of household buying income that happened in this market, as well as throughout the state and throughout the region. But retail continued to expand and better serve our local community needs. Next, we'll talk a little bit about employment. This is a community now that has a job base of close to 5,000 jobs. According to the state of Washington, in 2010, the first quarter, the Covington zip code had 4,890 jobs. The rate of job growth, like population, has been well above that of the state and the county. Covington has grown at about 6% rate since 2002, compared with King County, which is just above 0. That's factoring in the effects of the recession in the state of Washington, which has grown by about 1% a year, again between 2002 and 2010. Obviously, we had a strong run up through about 2007, 2008, and then a significant drop off since. But overall, Covington has done very well throughout this period as it's really begun to come into its own. Real strengths in terms of employment are in retail, lodging, and dining, which together have 2,222 jobs, according to the state, which is just under half the total of all jobs. Other sectors that are important in this community are healthcare and construction, at about 500 jobs apiece. As you know, major additions to healthcare recently in terms of Valley Medical and multi-care that are expanding within the community. Other sectors that are important but with a little lesser employment include some role for manufacturing and wholesale trade, a little bit smaller employment, and also the government sector. But you can really see what the major drivers of this economy have been. The city, next, to talk a little bit about city services. This is a community that knows how to operate very lean compared to other cities. Its per capita revenues and expenditures are in the neighborhood of about $800 per capita. You compare that to per capita average of about $2,400 per person across the entire state. And there are a couple of reasons for that. In addition to operating lean, some of the core services are provided by their providers, such as fire and utility providers. But I think it's also been because this city has been very conservative and prudent in its approach, and that's also reflected in the fact that its debt cost is relatively low at only about 1/5 of the state average, again on a per capita basis. So let's talk a little bit about where we're headed with economic recovery. People talk about a new normal. What does that mean? Clearly across the country, it's all about jobs, and I think the message probably is not a lot different in the state of Washington, King County, or southeast King County. There is more impetus for a more diverse job base within this community, as well as making sure that you begin to continue to build a broad and diverse tax base so that we're not relying on just one revenue source. Changing demographics are going to be important. As a nation, we are aging. This nation in the next 10 to 15 years is going to see older demographics that we've never really seen as a nation before. In many ways, Covington is ahead of the curve because you're a younger population. You won't have that dependency ratio of many other communities, both statewide and nationally. This is an affordable community. That's going to be extremely important as we move into this new normal where economic recovery is proving to be halting, and we see potentially higher long-term structural issues in terms of employment. So affordability for residents and businesses and taxpayer value are all going to be things that people place even more of a premium on in the future than in the past. Sense of place is important. That has to some extent played to the advantage in recent years of central city areas which have held their own better than others because of the cost of driving and commuting. It is increasingly important to communities that are at the edge of the metro region, and I think is a good indication of why it is critical that communities like Covington move on creating that sense of place, for example, through the town center plan. And finally, something that this community has, I think, deservedly high marks for compared to others, at least I've worked in, is your sense of collaboration and the kind of the proof in terms of results that generate business and investment confidence. Let me wrap up by just talking a little bit about goals and policies as Covington moves forward in Partners for Prosperity. Through this economic development strategy, these were some of the primary goals and policies. Balanced development that would be business and resident responsive. Economic development strategy that would be strategic, meaning that we look for opportunities as they're presented for sustained business expansion, retention, and entrepreneurship. The focus on town center as a major community focal point, a source of pride, and as another driver in helping to, again, continue to broaden the economic base of Covington. Commercial and mixed-use development that can serve both local residents as well as visitors as the center of this much broader regional trade area. A drive with employment to create better balance between jobs and housing, and to move towards above average incomes, and to sustain that strong income base within the community. Land use policies that are structured to facilitate and work with commercial and job development. Community infrastructure that places high emphasis on business and workforce development. And finally, or actually the first of the list, but when it was put into the plan by CEDAS, is the notion, again, of partnerships, which are critical for sustaining that prosperity, for profitability and investment. A positive service culture in a city of entrepreneurs. I want to thank you for taking the time here, and I'd be happy to turn it back to Jeff and go from there. Thank you.